Take number 3. Welcome to Musical Instrument Terms with Mr. DeGracia. We're going to be learning some excellent terms for a few different reasons. One of them is so that we can sound smart when we talk about instruments that we're learning about, and also so we can help Creflon escape by answering some questions. Study up. My life depends on it. Right? So some little bit of added incentive there is we're going to save Creflon's life as he tries to go through that escape room. Let's get into it. The most important term is technique. That's the one we start with. Without technique, we can't get a timbre, we can't get a range, and we can't get textures. So let's start with technique. Technique is the way the instrument is played. The reason technique is important is there's these 4 instrument families that we'll learn about, and they're divided up by technique. It's not really by what they're made of. Woodwinds need wind to work. Right? Wind needs to go into a hole, over a reed. That's technique for a woodwind. For a brass, a lot of people would think that the trumpet needs to be played the same way. I thought when I was a kid, when I picked up somebody's trumpet, and this is totally gross in pre-COVID-19 days, but I picked it up and I into it, and I was like, your trumpet is broken, dude. And he told me, no, you don't blow into a trumpet. I said, like, how do you play a trumpet? He was like, pfft, and I thought he was being funny, but see? That's how the trumpet makes a sound. Next, with stringed instruments, you can get a sound out of them by strumming, by plucking, and by bowing. By bowing wrong, we get a little squeak on there. Right? That's the technique for the strings. And for percussion, I think I was sitting on one earlier, but we can get one out of this. I have a box drum back there. Percussion need to be hit, shaken, or scrape. Those are different techniques for the 4 different instrument families. And the techniques actually make the family. So if we have good technique, we can get the timbre of the instrument. For 2 weeks at a time, throughout my college career, I had a different instrument, a woodwind, a brass, a string, a percussion, and my own voice as well. And during those 2 weeks, I had to learn how to play the instrument better than a junior high kid would. To get the timbre, to get the sound out of each of those instruments, I have to get the technique right. That's why we have the technique coming first. So if our technique is bad, we don't get the right kinds of timbre. If I go at a diagonal, we get kind of a squeaky noise. So technique is important to get the characteristic sound. Timbre is the color of the sound. That's how I know the difference between the sound of the trumpet, the sound of the violin. If I play the same note on a violin as I do on a trumpet, together they sound pretty, they won't sound gross. But you can tell that one has the timbre of a trumpet, one has the timbre of a violin. So those 2 are different timbres. They have different qualities, maybe they have different feelings. So a composer would write something for a violin because of its timbre, they would feel sad when they hear it. Or because of the trumpet's timbre, they would feel like empowered or like heroic when they listen to it. So that's timbre. The color of the sound, the quality of the sound. You can't get a good timbre without good technique. Also, with good technique, you can access all the notes that the instrument can play. For example, on this ukulele, I go from its lowest note to its highest note. Right? Range. This is the timbre of the ukulele. And that timbre is present in all the notes. But I would have to know a little something about ukulele to access all those notes. If I'm trying to play it right here and wondering why the sound's not changing, I would not know my technique. So that's important. Range is from my lowest to my highest note that I can hit. Maybe one up here. Right. When it comes to the woodwinds, the range would be from all my fingers to no fingers. So that's range, and with range come high and low notes, and you need different techniques to get those different high and low notes. So it depends on the player, the actual range of the instrument. Unless it's the piano, you can just hit the lowest key, hit the highest key. All right, and branching off of timbre, which was the color of the sound, we would then have texture. So texture would be the combination of sounds. One of my favorite textures in music is that of DMX. DMX, on his album, one of his albums, he would take his voice doing a barking dog and the sound of his drums, put them together. So those are two timbres. Then we've got DMX drums. Another example of texture would be in Hollywood. You create sound effects by putting a bunch of different timbres together. If you've ever watched Law & Order SVU, maybe you shouldn't be watching SVU, but if you've seen it, you hear this like dum-dum sound before each scene, and that has like 12 different sounds, including monks chanting, maybe a jail door closing, somebody hitting something, like a whole bunch of things put together. All different kinds of instrument families put together to make that dum-dum sound that you hear. So we'll hear some of that sound design when we do the quiz. So speaking of quiz, let's check that out. I made some textures in order to make this quiz a little more enjoyable. Here we go. The order you pull out the keys matters. Do your best. We would not want this to happen. So use all the clues available to help you. I know you can do it. Which deals with lowest to highest notes instruments can play? Think about it, use the background, and I hope you got it right. It was range. I still have my eyebrows, so we're okay. Which deals with the color or kind of sound of an instrument? That one had to be timbre. I'm glad you got timbre correct. We have two choices left. Which deals with the way an instrument is played? And thanks for choosing in the correct order. Which deals with the combined sound of instruments? And it has to be, there we go. So, thanks for coming out.